My friends, one of the greatest challenges in life is dealing with toxic people. These are the people who drain your energy, disturb your peace, and try to control how you feel. But Stoic wisdom teaches us something powerful. Toxic people only have power if we give it to them. The Stoics believe that no one can hurt your mind unless you allow it. They cannot control your thoughts, your reactions, or your inner world. Their words belong to them. Your response belongs to you. And when you learn to master your response, the toxic person becomes powerless. Toxic people only have power if you give it to them. This is one of the most important lessons we can learn, and it comes from the heart of Stoic wisdom. Too often, we allow others to control our emotions, our thoughts, and even our actions, simply because we believe they have the right or the ability to do so. But the truth is, their power is not real unless we make it real. Their words cannot hurt us unless we let them. Their opinions cannot define us unless we allow them to. Their anger, their criticism, their manipulations only matter when we give them importance in our minds. The moment we recognize this, we take the first step toward reclaiming our own strength and freedom. Think about how a toxic person operates. They often use criticism, judgment, manipulation, or even guilt to make us react. They try to pull our focus away from what matters, to trap us in their negativity. But every time we react with anger, fear, or frustration, we are handing them the keys to our inner world. They are only powerful because we let them be. They rely on our attention, our emotions, and our energy to feel strong. If we stop giving them that energy, they cannot affect us in the way they want. Their control is only as real as the value we assign to it. One of the ways to stop giving them power is to train your mind to observe rather than absorb. Instead of immediately reacting to a hurtful comment, pause and ask yourself, does this really affect me? Is this a reflection of my worth, or is it a reflection of their own struggles? Toxic people are often deeply unhappy, insecure, or frustrated, and they project that onto others. Understanding this shifts the perspective. Their behavior is about them, not you. When you see their negativity as a projection, it loses its ability to penetrate your mind and your peace. Another key aspect is detachment. Detachment does not mean indifference or coldness. It means recognizing what is yours and what is not. Your thoughts, your emotions, your peace, these belong to you. The toxic person's anger, criticism, or manipulations belong to them. You can interact with them politely, even assertively, but you do not have to absorb their toxicity. By maintaining this separation, you prevent them from stealing your calm, your confidence, and your focus. Stoicism also teaches the value of self-mastery. The more you master your own mind, the less anyone else can control it. This begins with small practices: noticing when you feel irritated, pausing before speaking, and choosing responses that align with your values rather than reactions that give someone else power. The more you do this, the more you realize that your emotional state is in your control, not theirs. They can create noise, but they cannot create disturbance unless you participate. The power dynamic shifts when you stop giving attention to harmful behavior. Toxic people thrive on engagement, arguments, defensiveness, emotional reactions. If you respond with calmness, composure, and neutrality, their attempts to control you fail. You reclaim the space they wanted to invade. You take back your time, your focus, and your peace. Over time, they may even stop trying, because they realize their tactics no longer work. Their power is neutralized without aggression or confrontation, simply by refusing to give it to them. By internalizing this principle, you build resilience. You learn that external circumstances, including toxic individuals, cannot dictate your inner state. You understand that power is not something others hold over you. It is something you permit. When you carry this understanding, you interact with the world from a place of strength and clarity. You respond thoughtfully, not react impulsively. You protect your peace without needing to control them. You live freely, knowing that the only power toxic people have is the power you allow, and the moment you stop allowing it, they lose it entirely. Pausing before reacting and creating emotional distance is one of the most powerful strategies to deal with toxic people. Most of the pain we feel from others does not come from their words or actions themselves, but from the speed at which we respond without thinking. When someone criticizes us, insults us, or manipulates us, our natural instinct is to react immediately. We feel anger, hurt, or frustration, and we respond with words or actions that give them control. In those moments, we allow them to dictate how we feel, what we say, and sometimes even how we behave. Stoic philosophy teaches that by introducing a pause between the stimulus and our response, we regain our freedom. We no longer act under the influence of their toxicity, but under the guidance of our own reason and values. This pause can be as simple as taking a single deep breath. When you feel your emotions rising in response to a toxic person, stop. In that brief moment, remind yourself that you have the choice to respond differently. You are not required to match their negativity. You are not required to defend yourself immediately. You are not required to let them pull you into chaos. That pause is the doorway to control. It is the moment where your emotional independence begins. Creating emotional distance also means mentally separating yourself from the behavior of the toxic person. Understand that their words and actions are a reflection of their inner struggles, not a reflection of your worth. When you internalize this, it becomes easier to view their toxicity objectively, without becoming entangled in it. Imagine standing a few steps back and watching their actions as if you are an observer rather than a participant. This mental distance allows you to see the situation clearly. You notice the patterns in their behavior, the ways they try to provoke, and the ways they attempt to manipulate you, without absorbing any of it personally. Another important aspect of emotional distance is maintaining composure. Stoics believed that your inner state should not be dictated by external forces. When you pause and create distance, you give yourself the opportunity to choose a calm, measured response instead of reacting impulsively. You can speak without anger, act without resentment, and preserve your dignity. This does not mean suppressing emotions. It means controlling the timing and expression of them. Anger expressed impulsively often gives toxic people the satisfaction they seek, but controlled and intentional expression protects your power. Emotional distance also protects your energy. Engaging immediately with toxic behavior drains mental and emotional resources. You may feel justified in arguing back or defending yourself, but each reactive engagement strengthens their influence. By pausing, you conserve your energy and redirect it toward what truly matters: your goals, your peace, and your growth. Stoicism teaches that your focus is precious and limited, and investing it in toxic conflicts is a waste. Instead, the pause allows you to redirect your attention to actions that build your life rather than feeding their negativity. Practicing this consistently rewires your mind. The more you pause and create emotional distance, the more automatic it becomes. You begin to notice the triggers before they fully take hold, and you can step back even earlier. Over time, toxic people lose the ability to provoke you because you no longer respond in predictable ways. You create a protective barrier around your emotions. Your calmness becomes your strength, and the toxicity that once seemed overwhelming now slides off without affecting you. This habit also strengthens your decision-making. When your reactions are not driven by immediate emotion, you can assess the situation logically. You can choose whether to respond, how to respond, or even if it is worth responding at all. Each pause is a small act of mastery over yourself, and these small acts accumulate into a life where you are in control of your mind and your actions. You learn that control is not taken by force, but maintained through awareness and discipline, and that every time you pause, you reclaim a little more of your personal power. One of the most important ways to make toxic people powerless is to stop taking their words or actions personally. So often, the pain we feel from others comes not from what they do, but from how we interpret it. When someone insults us, criticizes us, or behaves aggressively, our first instinct is to internalize it. We feel hurt, offended, or defensive. We start asking ourselves why they said that, what it means about us, or whether we are failing in some way. Stoic philosophy teaches that this is a trap that gives toxic people power over our minds. Their words and actions are about them, their fears, their insecurities, and their limitations. They are not about your value, your identity, or your worth. When you stop taking things personally, you begin to see toxic behavior clearly. You realize that insults, manipulations, and criticisms reflect the other person's internal struggles. People who are unhappy, insecure, or frustrated often project those feelings onto others. They try to provoke reactions to make themselves feel stronger or to distract from their own weaknesses. Understanding this allows you to step back mentally and emotionally. You no longer absorb their negativity as if it were a personal attack. Instead, you observe it as a reflection of their character, not a reflection of your value. Another key aspect of this practice is building mental separation. Imagine a toxic person saying something hurtful. Instead of immediately internalizing it, you pause and remind yourself, this is their problem, not mine. Their words may sting at first, but that sting only lasts as long as you let it. By mentally separating yourself from the action, you prevent it from affecting your emotions deeply. This does not mean ignoring harmful behavior or pretending it does not exist. It means recognizing that their attacks do not define you and choosing not to allow them to dictate your inner state. This approach also helps you respond thoughtfully instead of reactively. When we take things personally, our reactions are often fueled by anger, fear, or insecurity. We argue, defend ourselves, or try to change the other person's behavior, which gives them exactly what they want, attention and emotional control. By not taking their actions personally, you gain the freedom to respond calmly, strategically, or even to not respond at all. You regain control over your energy, your time, and your mental space. Stoics emphasize that your inner peace is your responsibility. No one else can disturb it unless you permit it. When you stop personalizing toxic behavior, you are protecting this peace. You refuse to let external negativity infiltrate your mind. You become resilient because your self-worth is grounded internally, not in other people's approval or opinions. This resilience makes toxic attempts to control, manipulate, or provoke completely ineffective. Their power diminishes simply because you refuse to participate in the story they are trying to write. Consistently practicing this mindset rewires your responses over time. At first, it may feel unnatural to detach emotionally from criticism or hostility. You may still feel initial discomfort or irritation, but with practice, it becomes second nature. You learn to filter what is important from what is irrelevant. You begin to see patterns in toxic behavior and understand that reacting emotionally only strengthens their influence. Over time, their words and actions lose their edge, and you experience freedom from unnecessary suffering. By not taking things personally, you also strengthen relationships with others. You can interact with clarity and fairness without being pulled into drama or conflict. You can assert boundaries without guilt, communicate calmly without defensiveness, and maintain your dignity even in difficult situations. Toxic people may continue their behavior, but it no longer has control over your mind or emotions. You have created a space where their negativity cannot take root, and your inner world remains calm, steady, and unshakable. One of the most powerful lessons in dealing with toxic people is understanding that their behavior reflects who they are, not who you are. When someone acts cruelly, manipulatively, or aggressively, it is easy to assume that there is something wrong with us, that we caused it, or that we somehow deserve it. But Stoicism teaches the opposite. Toxic actions are a mirror of the person acting, not the target of their behavior. They reveal their fears, insecurities, weaknesses, and limitations. When you truly grasp this, you free yourself from their power. You stop carrying the weight of their negativity, and you start seeing the world with clarity and detachment. Every human being operates from a combination of their experiences, emotions, and beliefs. Toxic people are no exception. Their actions, harsh words, and manipulative tactics come from unresolved inner struggles. They may be insecure, jealous, frustrated, or deeply unhappy. They may not have learned healthy ways to communicate or handle conflict. Recognizing that their behavior is about them shifts the focus away from self-blame. It allows you to see that their actions have nothing to do with your worth, your morality, or your intelligence. You are not responsible for their flaws, and you cannot fix them by taking on their issues. When you internalize this concept, your emotional reaction changes dramatically. Instead of feeling hurt, defensive, or anxious, you begin to feel empathy, detachment, or even indifference. You understand that when someone lashes out or criticizes, they are speaking from their own pain. Their words are a reflection of their character, not a verdict on yours. This mental shift is a form of emotional armor. It prevents the toxic person from penetrating your inner world with their negativity, because you no longer accept their behavior as a personal attack. Understanding that toxic behavior is about them also helps you set healthy boundaries. When you see their actions clearly, you can decide what you will and will not tolerate. You can respond assertively, calmly, and rationally, instead of reacting emotionally. You do not have to match their negativity or absorb their stress. You can step back, disengage, or remove yourself from the situation entirely, all while remaining confident and grounded. The moment you recognize their behavior as a reflection of their struggles, you take control of how much influence they have over your life. This perspective also prevents unnecessary self-doubt. One of the ways toxic people maintain power is by making us question ourselves. They provoke guilt, shame, or anxiety, hoping we will believe their negativity. But if you know their behavior reflects them and not you, you are immune to these tactics. You do not have to justify yourself, explain yourself, or internalize their criticism. You maintain clarity because your understanding of yourself is based on your values, actions, and intentions, not someone else's projections. Stoicism emphasizes that our happiness and peace come from within, not from external events or other people. Recognizing that toxic behavior is a mirror of the other person aligns perfectly with this principle. It allows you to maintain control over your inner life, even when chaos surrounds you. You see the situation with rationality rather than emotion. You respond with wisdom rather than impulsiveness. You protect your mental space while observing the other person's flaws without judgment or anger. Over time, consistently practicing this mindset transforms how you deal with toxic people. You become less reactive, less affected, and less invested in their drama. Their attempts to manipulate or provoke lose effectiveness because you understand the source of their behavior. You become steady and composed in the face of negativity. You start to see patterns in their actions and predict their behavior without feeling threatened. This understanding gives you freedom, strength, and clarity. You realize that no matter how toxic someone behaves, their actions reveal more about them than they ever could about you. Setting clear boundaries is one of the most effective ways to make toxic people powerless. Boundaries are limits we set for ourselves about what we will accept from others and how we allow them to affect our lives. Many people struggle with toxic individuals because they do not establish these boundaries. They let others dictate their emotions, their time, and their energy. They feel obligated to tolerate bad behavior or accept constant negativity. Stoicism teaches us that our inner peace and our time are valuable resources, and protecting them is not selfish, it is essential. Without boundaries, we are giving others control over our lives, and toxic people thrive on that lack of structure. A boundary can be as simple as saying no to things that drain you or refusing to engage in conversations that are harmful. It can be about physical space, emotional space, or even digital space, such as limiting social media interactions. Boundaries are statements of self-respect. They are a way to communicate to the world that your peace, focus, and well-being are not negotiable. When you set a boundary, you are not punishing anyone else. You are simply protecting yourself. This clarity in your own mind allows you to interact with toxic people without being pulled into their chaos or drama. One of the reasons boundaries are so powerful is that toxic people rely on access to your energy and attention. They often manipulate, guilt, or provoke to get a reaction. If you allow them unlimited access, their influence over you grows. When you set boundaries, you restrict that access. You define what they can and cannot affect. You decide how much time and energy you give, and you stop responding automatically to attempts at provocation. Each time you enforce a boundary, you reclaim power over your inner life and reinforce your autonomy. Boundaries also give you the ability to make conscious choices about your interactions. You can decide when and how to engage, and when to walk away. This prevents toxic people from dictating your emotions or schedule. You remain in control of your decisions, rather than reacting out of fear, guilt, or obligation. Stoicism emphasizes that we should focus only on what is within our control. Setting boundaries is a perfect application of this principle. You cannot control a toxic person's behavior, but you can control how much influence they have over you and what you allow in your life. Another benefit of boundaries is the preservation of mental clarity. Toxic people often thrive on creating confusion, doubt, and emotional turmoil. They push limits to see how far they can go and how much they can disrupt your life. By maintaining clear boundaries, you prevent this chaos from taking root in your mind. You are able to remain calm, rational, and focused, even when they try to provoke you. Your mental space becomes a safe place that cannot be invaded without your permission, and this makes toxic tactics far less effective. Setting boundaries also teaches others how to treat you. People often respect the limits we enforce consistently. When toxic individuals encounter boundaries, they realize that manipulation, guilt, tripping, or provocation will not work with you. They may continue their behavior, but it will no longer have the same impact. Boundaries communicate strength without aggression. They are a quiet but powerful declaration that your time, peace, and energy are yours to protect. Finally, boundaries give you freedom. They allow you to prioritize your goals, values, and relationships with people who uplift you. They create space for growth, focus, and joy, without being overshadowed by negativity. Stoics believed that control over one's mind and environment is essential for living a virtuous life. By setting clear boundaries, you take control of the part of your world you can influence, and you remove toxic influence from the parts that matter most to you. This is how boundaries transform not only your interactions with toxic people, but also your life as a whole. Learning to say no without guilt is a vital skill when dealing with toxic people. Many of us have been taught that saying no is rude, selfish, or hurtful. We feel obligated to meet others' demands, even when doing so drains us emotionally, mentally, or physically. Toxic individuals take advantage of this tendency. They push boundaries, make unreasonable requests, or demand our time and energy, knowing that we might comply out of guilt, fear, or a desire to please. Stoicism teaches that our responsibility is to protect our inner peace and live according to our values. Saying no is not an act of cruelty. It is an act of self-respect, clarity, and personal freedom. When you learn to say no without guilt, you are creating a protective barrier against manipulation. Toxic people often use guilt as a weapon. They try to make you feel responsible for their feelings, for their happiness, or for the chaos they create. They hope that this sense of obligation will make you comply, even against your better judgment. By confidently saying no, you refuse to be trapped by their tactics. You make it clear that your priorities, your energy, and your peace are not negotiable. This simple word, when used wisely, has immense power to neutralize toxicity. Saying no effectively begins with understanding your own limits. Everyone has a finite amount of time, energy, and focus. When you overcommit, you weaken yourself and give others control over your resources. Stoics believed that we must act with wisdom, choosing carefully where to place our attention and effort. Recognizing your limits allows you to make decisions that align with your values. It is easier to say no when you know that saying yes would compromise your integrity, your goals, or your well-being. In this sense, no becomes a tool for discipline and self-preservation. Another important aspect of saying no without guilt is changing your perspective on the word itself. No is not rejection or punishment. It is a boundary. It is a statement of clarity about what is acceptable and what is not. You can communicate it politely, firmly, and respectfully. You do not need to apologize excessively, make excuses, or justify yourself. The more you normalize the use of no, the less power toxic people have to pressure or manipulate you. Your consistent practice of this principle gradually shifts the dynamics of the relationship, making it clear that you cannot be controlled through coercion or guilt. It is also important to practice detachment from the reaction of the other person. Toxic people may respond with anger, complaints, or attempts to guilt you into compliance. Stoicism teaches that other people's reactions are not within your control. Your responsibility is to act according to reason and virtue, not to satisfy their expectations or manage their emotions. By detaching from their response, you maintain your composure, confidence, and focus. You preserve your energy for things that matter rather than giving it to attempts at manipulation. Saying no without guilt also empowers you to prioritize what is truly important. It allows you to focus on your personal growth, meaningful relationships, and purposeful actions. It strengthens your identity and reinforces your self-worth. Every time you exercise this skill, you reclaim control over your life and limit the ability of toxic individuals to disrupt your path. Over time, they may even stop testing your boundaries because they realize their tactics no longer work. You learn that saying no is not about denying others. It is about affirming yourself and protecting your peace, which is the cornerstone of living a life guided by wisdom, clarity, and inner strength. Focusing on your goals instead of the negativity of toxic people is one of the most effective ways to protect your peace and personal power. Toxic individuals often thrive on distraction. They want you to spend your energy on arguments, drama, and emotional chaos instead of on things that matter to you. Stoicism teaches that our energy is limited, and how we spend it defines the quality of our lives. Every moment you focus on someone else's toxicity is a moment taken away from your own growth, your own goals, and your own happiness. By directing attention to your purpose, you create an invisible shield that makes their attempts to disturb or control you ineffective. Toxic people often use manipulation, criticism, or provocation to pull your focus away from what is meaningful. They may gossip, complain, or attack in ways designed to provoke strong emotional reactions. If you allow yourself to be drawn into this negativity, you give them control. Your mind becomes occupied with things that do not serve your life, and your goals get delayed or diluted. The Stoic approach is to recognize that other people's negativity is external, and it is not your responsibility to fix, manage, or respond to it. Instead, your responsibility is to maintain focus on what is within your control, your actions, your values, and your progress toward meaningful objectives. One of the ways to maintain this focus is to clearly define your goals and priorities. When you know what matters most to you, you can see toxic distractions for what they are: interruptions, not imperatives. You can remind yourself that engaging in unnecessary conflict only slows your progress. Your attention is a resource, and by using it wisely, you ensure that your energy contributes to building the life you want, rather than feeding the drama created by others. This clarity of purpose is a powerful form of protection against negativity. Another important aspect is self-discipline. Toxic people test our patience and attention constantly. They may make provocative comments, create tension, or attempt to undermine your confidence. By practicing discipline, you train yourself to remain steady, calm, and focused even in the face of provocation. You do not react impulsively. You do not give them the satisfaction of seeing you disturbed. You redirect your thoughts to constructive actions, your plans, and your personal development. This discipline gradually diminishes the influence that toxic individuals have over your emotional and mental state. Focusing on your goals also shifts your mindset from victimhood to empowerment. When you prioritize your objectives, you become the active agent in your life, rather than a passive participant in someone else's negativity. You recognize that your progress, achievements, and satisfaction are determined by your own choices, not by the words or actions of others. This shift in perspective allows you to remain motivated, resilient, and committed, regardless of the chaos that toxic people may try to create around you. Another benefit is that focusing on goals reduces emotional exhaustion. Engaging with toxicity drains energy, causes stress, and creates mental clutter. By keeping your attention on your own growth and objectives, you conserve energy for productive actions and meaningful relationships. You avoid unnecessary emotional conflicts that leave you feeling depleted and frustrated. The Stoics believed that guarding one's mental space is essential for living a virtuous and effective life, and focusing on goals rather than negativity is a practical application of this principle. Over time, this practice builds confidence and inner strength. You learn that the opinions, criticisms, and manipulations of toxic people cannot stop you unless you allow them to. Their negativity becomes background noise rather than a central part of your experience. You develop resilience, clarity, and a sense of purpose that no outside influence can shake. By focusing on your goals, you create a life where progress, fulfillment, and peace are prioritized above all else, making toxic individuals powerless and irrelevant in your journey. Avoiding unnecessary arguments or explanations is a key way to reduce the power that toxic people have over you. Toxic individuals often try to draw others into conflict, debates, or endless explanations, knowing that this engagement gives them influence and attention. Stoic philosophy teaches that our time, energy, and peace of mind are valuable resources. Engaging in arguments that lead nowhere or providing explanations to people who refuse to understand is a waste of these resources. The more we resist the impulse to defend ourselves unnecessarily, the more we maintain control over our own lives. Arguments rarely change the mindset of a toxic person. Most of the time, they are not seeking understanding or resolution. Instead, they want to provoke emotional reactions, assert dominance, or distract you from your goals. When you recognize this, it becomes clear that engaging in the fight only gives them what they want. By refusing to participate in pointless disputes, you remove their ability to manipulate your emotions. You protect your mental energy and prevent yourself from being drawn into cycles of stress and negativity. Similarly, explanations are often unnecessary and ineffective. Toxic people may demand justification for your choices, actions, or beliefs. They might question your decisions or criticize you in ways that feel personal. Responding to every accusation or defending every choice gives them control over your attention and energy. Stoicism teaches that your actions should be guided by reason, virtue, and purpose, not by the approval or understanding of others. When you choose not to explain yourself unnecessarily, you reinforce your independence. You make it clear that your inner peace is not negotiable and that your energy will not be spent on trying to satisfy someone else's need to control or judge you. Practicing this principle requires awareness and discipline. It is natural to want to respond when challenged or insulted. We feel a need to justify ourselves, defend our reputation, or prove that we are right. However, by pausing and assessing the situation, we can determine whether engagement is truly necessary. Often, the toxic person's goal is to elicit a reaction, not to reach understanding. Choosing silence, a calm statement, or simply walking away allows you to maintain control over your emotions while refusing to give them the satisfaction of seeing you disturbed. Avoiding unnecessary arguments also strengthens your boundaries. It communicates to toxic individuals that you will not be drawn into chaos or manipulated through conflict. You remain calm, composed, and in control, which reduces their influence over you. Boundaries and restraint are not signs of weakness, they are indicators of strength. By staying out of fruitless disputes, you preserve your focus and protect your energy for things that truly matter, your goals, relationships, and personal growth. Over time, avoiding unnecessary arguments and explanations becomes a habit that transforms your interactions. Toxic people may continue their behavior, but their attempts to provoke or manipulate lose effectiveness. You are no longer reacting impulsively, which frustrates their attempts to dominate or unsettle you. This practice cultivates inner strength, patience, and clarity of thought. You begin to recognize patterns in toxic behavior and can anticipate attempts to engage you in conflict. You learn to respond selectively, strategically, and intentionally, rather than reacting automatically. Additionally, choosing not to argue or explain unnecessarily fosters emotional freedom. You are no longer tied to the expectations, judgments, or criticisms of others. Your peace, confidence, and focus remain intact because they are rooted in your own understanding of yourself and your values, rather than in external validation. Stoicism emphasizes that we cannot control others' opinions or actions, but we can control our response. By avoiding needless disputes and explanations, you exercise this control fully, preserving your energy and peace, while allowing toxic people to lose their power over your mind and emotions. Defining yourself by your virtues rather than the opinions of others is a core principle and a crucial strategy for handling toxic people. Too often, we allow ourselves to be shaped by external judgments, criticisms, or praise. We seek validation from others, adjust our behavior to meet their expectations, and let their opinions dictate how we feel about ourselves. Toxic individuals exploit this tendency. They know that if they can make you doubt your worth, question your choices, or feel guilty, they gain control over your mind and emotions. Stoicism teaches that true self-definition comes from within, from the qualities we cultivate, rather than from the fluctuating views of others. Virtues are the internal qualities that guide our thoughts, actions, and decisions. They include honesty, courage, wisdom, patience, self-discipline, and integrity. When you focus on these traits, you create a stable foundation for your identity. This foundation is independent of outside influences. Toxic people cannot undermine your virtues because they are inherent to your character. When your sense of self is rooted in your principles, rather than in the approval or judgment of others, you develop resilience against negativity, manipulation, and criticism. One of the reasons defining yourself by your virtues is so powerful is that it removes the emotional leverage toxic people try to exert. When your worth depends on someone else's opinion, even small criticisms can cause significant distress. Every insult, manipulative comment, or unfair judgment becomes a threat. But when your identity is grounded in your virtues, external opinions lose their ability to harm you. Their words may exist in the external world, but they cannot penetrate the inner fortress of your values. You remain calm, confident, and centered because you know who you are and what you stand for. Another aspect of this principle is self-accountability. When you define yourself by your virtues, you measure your actions and decisions against your own standards, not the fluctuating opinions of others. This allows you to act with integrity, even in the presence of toxic individuals. You make choices based on reason, wisdom, and long-term benefit rather than on fear of judgment, rejection, or disapproval. You gain clarity because your moral compass, not external noise, guides your actions. This is a form of inner freedom that toxic people cannot touch. Focusing on virtues also strengthens emotional resilience. Toxic people often attempt to provoke feelings of guilt, shame, or inadequacy. When you are secure in your virtues, these attempts are ineffective. You recognize that their negativity reflects their own struggles, not your value. You respond from a place of principle, not reaction. This creates a powerful dynamic where the toxic person's attempts to manipulate or destabilize you fail. Over time, this consistent practice builds a strong, unshakable sense of self that operates independently of external influence. Furthermore, defining yourself by your virtues fosters personal growth. By prioritizing qualities such as patience, honesty, courage, and discipline, you continuously improve yourself. You become less reactive, more self-aware, and more intentional in your actions. Your life is guided by purpose rather than by the chaos created by toxic individuals. This focus on self-improvement ensures that your energy is invested in meaningful growth rather than in reacting to negativity, and it gradually diminishes the relevance and power of toxic behavior in your life. Ultimately, when you define yourself by your virtues and not by the opinions of others, you create a mental and emotional armor that protects you from manipulation, criticism, and negativity. Your identity becomes self-determined, stable, and resilient. Toxic people may continue to act, criticize, or manipulate, but their influence over your mind and emotions is neutralized because you measure your worth through the lens of your character, rather than through external approval or disapproval. This Stoic principle transforms not only how you deal with toxic people, but also how you navigate life with confidence, clarity, and inner strength. Building a strong sense of identity and self-worth is one of the most important strategies to make toxic people powerless in your life. Many of us allow others to shape how we see ourselves, adjusting our actions and feelings based on their judgments, criticisms, or expectations. Toxic individuals take advantage of this tendency by trying to undermine our confidence, manipulate our emotions, or make us question our value. Stoicism teaches that true strength comes from within, from a clear understanding of who we are and what we stand for. When your identity and self-worth are firmly established, external negativity loses its power to disturb or control you. A strong sense of identity begins with self-awareness. You must know your values, principles, and goals. When you understand what matters most to you, you can make decisions and take actions that align with your authentic self, rather than reacting to the opinions or manipulations of others. Toxic people often try to create confusion by projecting doubt or criticism, hoping to make you question your choices. When your identity is rooted in self-knowledge and clarity, their attempts to destabilize you fail. You act intentionally, not impulsively, and your life is guided by purpose rather than by external influence. Self-worth is equally important. It is the internal recognition of your value, independent of what others think or say. Many people tie their self-esteem to approval from others, making them vulnerable to manipulation and criticism. Toxic individuals exploit this vulnerability by making you feel guilty, insecure, or unworthy. Stoic philosophy teaches that your worth is determined by your character, your actions, and your adherence to virtue, not by external validation. When you internalize this truth, you no longer rely on toxic people for affirmation. Their words may exist in the external world, but they cannot change your intrinsic value. Building this strong sense of self also involves developing confidence in your decisions and boundaries. Toxic people often test limits, attempting to manipulate you into saying yes when you want to say no, or into compromising your values to please them. When your identity and self-worth are firmly established, you are able to assert boundaries confidently and without guilt. You understand that protecting your peace, time, and energy is a reflection of self-respect, not selfishness. By maintaining clear boundaries, you limit their influence and prevent their toxicity from penetrating your life. Another aspect is resilience against criticism and negativity. Toxic individuals often try to provoke emotional reactions, expecting anger, defensiveness, or guilt. A strong sense of identity allows you to observe their behavior objectively, understanding that their words are a reflection of their own struggles, not your value. You respond calmly or choose not to respond at all, preserving your emotional energy. This consistent practice strengthens your self-worth and gradually diminishes the power toxic people have over your mind and emotions. Fostering a strong identity also encourages personal growth. When you focus on your values and virtues, you become less concerned with pleasing others or avoiding criticism. Your energy is invested in meaningful goals, self-improvement, and actions that align with your principles. This shift reduces the influence of toxic individuals because their negativity no longer distracts or controls you. Over time, you develop a mindset that is resilient, confident, and self-directed, where external manipulation has little effect. Ultimately, building a strong sense of identity and self-worth creates a foundation of inner strength that toxic people cannot shake. Your life becomes guided by your principles, not by their judgments. You recognize your value from within, independent of external approval or disapproval. As a result, toxic individuals lose the ability to control your emotions, influence your decisions, or disturb your peace, because their power relies on your uncertainty. And when you are certain of your worth and identity, they become powerless. Staying calm and maintaining inner peace is one of the most powerful strategies to deal with toxic people. Toxic individuals often seek to disturb, provoke, or manipulate others because they thrive on chaos and emotional reactions. They may use criticism, insults, or manipulative tactics to try to create anger, fear, or frustration. When you allow yourself to become agitated, they gain control over your thoughts, feelings, and actions. Stoicism teaches that your mind and your emotional state are within your control. By remaining calm, you take back your power, and toxic people lose the ability to influence or dominate you. The first step to staying calm is awareness. Notice when you feel triggered or upset by someone's words or behavior. Recognize the initial emotional reaction without acting on it immediately. Pausing in this moment allows you to respond intentionally, rather than react impulsively. It gives you the opportunity to choose your response based on reason, virtue, and personal values, rather than giving in to the chaos created by the toxic individual. This simple practice of mindfulness and observation begins to shift control from external forces to your own inner self. Inner peace comes from detachment. This does not mean indifference or avoidance. It means understanding that toxic people's negativity belongs to them, not to you. Their anger, judgment, or manipulative behavior reflects their inner struggles, insecurities, and limitations, not your worth or character. By mentally and emotionally separating yourself from their actions, you maintain a calm perspective. You see their behavior clearly without becoming entangled in it. This detachment allows you to remain composed and unaffected, even in situations that would normally provoke frustration or stress. Another important aspect of staying calm is focusing on what is within your control. Toxic people may act unpredictably or unfairly, but you cannot control their behavior. What you can control is your reaction, your attitude, and the way you allow their actions to affect you. Stoics believe that peace of mind comes from focusing on what you can control and letting go of what you cannot. By centering yourself on your own values, actions, and intentions, you prevent toxic individuals from manipulating your emotions or distracting you from your purpose. Staying calm also strengthens your ability to respond wisely. When you are composed, you can assess situations clearly, make rational decisions, and choose strategies that protect your peace and boundaries. Calmness allows you to act assertively without aggression, to maintain your dignity without defensiveness, and to enforce boundaries without guilt. This approach undermines the strategies toxic people often use to control or provoke you, because they rely on emotional reactions to feel powerful. When you remain unshaken, their attempts lose effectiveness. Practicing calmness consistently builds resilience over time. Each moment in which you choose peace over reaction strengthens your mental and emotional control. You develop the habit of responding thoughtfully, rather than impulsively, and of protecting your energy from unnecessary conflict. Your calmness becomes a shield that toxic people cannot penetrate. The more you practice, the more automatic this response becomes, and the less influence others have over your inner life. Finally, maintaining inner peace creates a sense of freedom. You are no longer bound by the moods, demands, or negativity of toxic individuals. Your focus can remain on your goals, growth, and meaningful relationships. You are guided by reason, clarity, and purpose rather than by the chaos that others try to impose. Stoicism emphasizes that true power lies in mastery over oneself, and inner calm is the most practical and effective way to achieve that mastery. By cultivating this state, you make toxic people powerless because their ability to disturb you depends entirely on your willingness to surrender your peace, and once you refuse, their influence disappears. Limiting exposure to people who drain your energy is a key strategy in making toxic individuals powerless. Toxic people often feed off the attention, emotions, and time of others. They may complain constantly, create drama, manipulate emotions, or demand more than is reasonable. When we spend too much time around such individuals, we allow them to consume our mental and emotional resources, leaving us exhausted, stressed, or frustrated. Stoicism teaches that our energy and focus are limited and precious, and we must guard them carefully. By choosing to limit contact with those who drain us, we reclaim control over our lives and protect our peace. The first step in limiting exposure is awareness. Notice who in your life consistently leaves you feeling drained, anxious, or negative. Toxic people often create patterns of behavior. They may repeatedly criticize, manipulate, or provoke emotional reactions. By recognizing these patterns, you can make conscious decisions about how much interaction is necessary and what boundaries to set. Awareness helps prevent automatic engagement in energy draining dynamics and allows you to act intentionally rather than react impulsively. Physical space is one way to limit exposure. If someone constantly disrupts your peace, consider reducing face-to-face interactions. This does not mean cutting off everyone, but it means prioritizing environments and relationships that support your well-being. You may choose to limit time spent in meetings, social events, or gatherings where toxic behavior is common. Creating physical distance protects your energy and prevents unnecessary stress from affecting your daily life. Emotional and mental space are equally important. Limit conversations that lead to conflict, guilt, or negativity. You can politely disengage, avoid certain topics, or redirect discussions toward neutral or positive subjects. By doing this, you prevent the toxic person from using your emotions to gain control or influence. Stoicism teaches that our inner world is sacred, and preserving it requires vigilance. We are not obligated to absorb negativity, argue endlessly, or justify ourselves to people who do not act in good faith. Digital boundaries are another practical tool. Toxic people often extend their influence through phone calls, messages, or social media. Constant notifications, arguments, or online criticism can drain mental energy quickly. Setting limits, such as muting notifications, limiting online contact, or even blocking harmful interactions, allows you to preserve focus, calm, and productivity. These small but intentional steps reduce the opportunities for toxic behavior to impact your life and strengthen your emotional independence. Limiting exposure also strengthens your ability to enforce personal boundaries. Toxic individuals often test limits repeatedly. When you consistently protect your time, space, and energy, they learn that manipulative tactics will not succeed. This consistency sends a clear message that you are in control of your life, and that attempts to provoke or drain you will not work. Your calmness and boundaries become an invisible armor that prevents toxicity from taking hold. Another benefit of limiting exposure is the preservation of focus and clarity. Toxic interactions often create mental clutter, distraction, and emotional stress. By reducing these encounters, you free up energy to pursue goals, cultivate positive relationships, and engage in personal growth. You maintain a clear mind that is focused on meaningful work and experiences, rather than being consumed by the drama or demands of toxic individuals. Over time, limiting exposure becomes a habit that naturally protects your peace. You learn to recognize warning signs, anticipate toxic behavior, and choose interactions that are constructive rather than draining. Stoicism emphasizes that our power lies in how we manage our own responses and environments. By reducing unnecessary exposure to those who drain your energy, you take back control of your time, focus, and mental space, making toxic people less relevant and significantly weakening their ability to affect your life. Surrounding yourself with people who uplift you is one of the most effective ways to neutralize the power of toxic individuals. Human beings are social creatures, and the people we spend time with have a direct impact on our mindset, emotions, and overall well-being. Positive, supportive, and inspiring individuals provide encouragement, perspective, and energy that strengthen our resilience. In contrast, toxic people drain us, create unnecessary stress, and attempt to manipulate or control our emotions. Stoicism teaches that while we cannot control the behavior of others, we can control who we choose to spend our time with, and intentionally surrounding ourselves with uplifting individuals fortifies our peace, confidence, and focus. Uplifting people contribute to our growth by offering encouragement and constructive feedback rather than criticism or manipulation. They celebrate our achievements, provide honest guidance when we seek it, and support our goals and aspirations. Being around such individuals creates an environment where positivity, motivation, and focus thrive. Toxic people, on the other hand, often criticize, belittle, or distract us from our path. By choosing to spend more time with those who uplift, we minimize exposure to negativity and increase the influence of encouragement and inspiration in our lives. This intentional selection of social circles helps us stay grounded, confident, and emotionally balanced. Another key benefit is emotional reinforcement. Toxic people often attempt to provoke feelings of doubt, guilt, or insecurity. Supportive individuals reinforce our sense of self, worth, and values. Their presence reminds us of our strengths and helps us maintain perspective when toxic individuals attempt to manipulate or belittle us. This reinforcement acts as a buffer against negativity. When you feel supported, you are less likely to internalize criticism or become reactive. The energy you gain from uplifting relationships strengthens your ability to maintain calm, focus, and composure in difficult situations. Surrounding yourself with positive people also encourages personal accountability and growth. When you are around those who inspire, motivate, and challenge you constructively, you are encouraged to strive for your best self. Their influence reinforces virtues like patience, honesty, integrity, and perseverance, aligning perfectly with Stoic principles. This positive influence creates a cycle where your focus remains on self-improvement, your goals, and your values rather than being distracted by toxic behavior. In contrast, spending time with toxic people often derails progress, consumes energy, and clouds judgment. Another aspect is perspective. Uplifting people help you see situations clearly without being caught in the emotional traps set by toxic individuals. They offer balanced, rational viewpoints that prevent misunderstandings, overreactions, or unnecessary stress. Their guidance can help you recognize patterns of toxicity, anticipate manipulative behavior, and choose appropriate, measured responses. This support enhances your ability to act thoughtfully rather than impulsively, maintaining your control over your emotional and mental state. Additionally, surrounding yourself with supportive individuals helps build a strong network of trust and loyalty. Toxic people often isolate or manipulate others to gain influence. By connecting with trustworthy, positive individuals, you create a community where mutual respect, honesty, and encouragement prevail. This network strengthens your resilience because you are no longer alone in facing challenges or dealing with negativity. You have allies who help reinforce your boundaries, boost your confidence, and remind you of your worth. Over time, consistently choosing uplifting company transforms your environment and mindset. You experience more peace, motivation, and clarity. Your focus shifts to growth, values, and meaningful interactions rather than reacting to toxicity. Stoicism teaches that we cannot control others, but we can control our environment and how we respond. By surrounding yourself with people who uplift you, you create a life where toxic individuals are less influential, their attempts at manipulation are weaker, and your inner peace and personal power are strengthened. Focusing on your own growth and improvement is one of the most powerful ways to make toxic people powerless in your life. Toxic individuals often try to distract you, manipulate your emotions, or provoke conflict because they thrive on controlling your attention and energy. When you focus on yourself, your goals, and your personal development, you no longer give them the power to influence your emotions, decisions, or self-worth. Stoicism teaches that the only things truly within our control are our own thoughts, actions, and choices. By dedicating yourself to growth, you invest in what matters most, rather than allowing toxic people to drain your energy or control your life. Personal growth begins with self-awareness. Understanding your strengths, weaknesses, values, and goals allows you to make intentional choices. When you are aware of who you are and what you want to achieve, you are less likely to be swayed by negativity or criticism from toxic individuals. Self-awareness also helps you recognize patterns of manipulation or emotional triggers, giving you the tools to respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively. By focusing on your growth, you shift your attention from external chaos to internal progress, and this shift drastically reduces the influence of toxic behavior. Setting goals is another key component of self-improvement. Goals provide direction, purpose, and motivation. When your energy is channeled into achieving meaningful objectives, there is less room for distraction or emotional manipulation. Toxic people often seek to derail your focus by creating drama or sowing doubt. By staying committed to your goals, you maintain a sense of control over your life. You build momentum through consistent action, and the more progress you make, the less impact their negativity has on your mindset. This approach reinforces the Stoic principle that we should focus on what we can control and let go of what we cannot. Continuous learning and skill development are also essential aspects of personal growth. By investing in yourself through education, practice, or self-reflection, you strengthen your confidence and competence. This growth provides a buffer against criticism or negativity, because you know your abilities and value. Toxic people often try to undermine confidence or provoke insecurity, but when you are actively improving yourself, you are more resilient and less susceptible to their attempts to control or belittle you. Growth makes you stronger mentally, emotionally, and even professionally, creating a foundation that toxicity cannot easily shake. Self-improvement also involves emotional and mental growth. Developing patience, resilience, discipline, and emotional intelligence equips you to handle challenging situations calmly and effectively. When you focus on cultivating these qualities, you gain mastery over your reactions. Toxic people lose power because they rely on emotional responses to manipulate or provoke you. By staying composed, you assert control over your inner world and reduce the impact of their negative behavior. Your peace and stability become independent of external influences. Focusing on growth also strengthens self-worth. When you prioritize improvement, your sense of value is rooted in your actions, effort, and principles rather than in external validation. Toxic people often attempt to create doubt or guilt, but a strong internal foundation makes you less affected by their behavior. You begin to measure your worth through progress, learning, and character, rather than through approval or judgment from others. This self-reliance reinforces Stoic teachings that we should seek virtue and excellence within ourselves, not in the opinions of others. Finally, dedicating yourself to growth transforms your life into one of purpose, focus, and resilience. Energy once spent reacting to toxicity is now invested in meaningful pursuits, skill development, and personal fulfillment. As you improve, toxic individuals gradually lose relevance because their attempts to provoke or control no longer distract or affect you. By focusing on your own growth and improvement, you create a life of autonomy, inner strength, and clarity, making toxic people powerless while you continue to evolve into the best version of yourself.